Luffy's execution has just been announced, but how will the entire world react? And more importantly, who will risk everything to save him? Today, we're breaking down how everyone in the One Piece world would respond to the news. Starting things off with Zoro, there's no chance he'd sit around waiting for someone else to make the first move. The second the execution is confirmed, he'd grab his swords and order the crew to set sail immediately. He'd probably lead everyone in the completely wrong direction until Jinbe takes over the navigation. At the same time, Zoro would be furious that Luffy managed to get himself captured again. But underneath that anger is absolute loyalty. We've already seen him offer up his own life at Thriller Bark, taking all of Luffy's pain from Kuma without hesitation. If he was ready to die for his captain back then, there's no question he'd do it again. But while Zoro's reaction is exactly what you'd expect, the next Straw Hat would completely lose control. Moving on to Nami. Her first reaction would probably be yelling about what an idiot Luffy is for getting himself into this mess. But the second she realizes the execution is actually happening, she'd completely break down. After everything they've survived together, losing the captain who changed her life is something she simply couldn't accept. But Nami doesn't stay heartbroken for long. She'd fill Zeus with massive thunderclouds, and by the time the crew reaches the battlefield, she'd be ready to rain destruction on anyone standing between her and Luffy. Now let's talk about Sanji. Sanji would already be preparing for war after everything Luffy sacrificed to save him during Whole Cake Island. There's no world where he'd let his captain face execution alone. He'd calmly light a cigarette, ignite Diable Jambe, and charge straight into battle without a second thought. We've seen Sanji risk everything for the people he loves, and Luffy is no exception. Even if saving him meant giving up his own life, Sanji wouldn't hesitate. And just like him, you shouldn't hesitate to hit that subscribe button. It'll mean the world to me if you subscribe. Anyways, let's talk about the crew's biggest coward. At first, Usopp would convince himself the news had to be fake. There's no way someone like Luffy could actually lose, right? But once reality finally sinks in, he'd completely break down. Luffy isn't just his captain. He's the person who gave Usopp the courage to chase his dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea. And just like Enies Lobby, when he stood against the world government for Robin, Usopp would force himself to overcome his fear one more time. He'd be terrified, but he'd still fight. Now, let's talk about Chopper. The poor guy would be absolutely devastated. Luffy accepted him when the rest of the world saw him as nothing more than a monster. And because of that, Chopper would refuse to lose the captain who gave him a family. I know Luffy sometimes calls him emergency food and even tries to eat him, but jokes aside, this is where Chopper becomes truly dangerous. Instead of thinking like a doctor, he'd fight purely with emotion, transforming into Monster Point and tearing through anyone standing between him and Luffy. But while Chopper relies on raw strength, the next Straw Hat would rely on something much more dangerous. Robin would stay surprisingly calm after hearing the announcement. Unlike the others, she understands exactly how the world government operates because she spent most of her life running from them. Instead of rushing in recklessly, Robin would immediately begin gathering intelligence. After all, Luffy once declared war on the entire world government just to save her. Franky would instantly throw himself into preparation mode. Instead of panicking, he'd begin transforming the Thousand Sunny into an even bigger war machine. By the time they're ready to leave, the Sunny wouldn't just be a ship anymore. It'd be a floating war machine. And if that wasn't enough, Franky would climb into General Franky himself, ready to blast through the Marines without slowing down. After all, the future Pirate King's journey isn't ending here, and the next Straw Hat makes sure of it. Brook is usually the one making jokes, but not this time. Luffy gave him a second family after decades of sailing alone, so hearing about his execution would instantly wipe the smile off his face. The moment battle begins, Brook would unsheath his sword, freeze everything in his path with the chilling power of his soul, and finally, Jinbe wouldn't panic. Instead of rushing in, he'd become the crew's anchor, keeping everyone focused. Jinbe has already saved Luffy more times than most people can count. He protected him during Marineford and carried him to safety after Ace's death. There's no way he'd allow history to repeat itself. If you thought the Straw Hats would be the most desperate to save Luffy, think again, because you might be forgetting about Boa Hancock. The instant the execution is announced, Hancock wouldn't waste a single second. She'd immediately order the Kuja pirates to set sail. And honestly, would anyone be surprised? We've already seen how far she'll go for Luffy. She attacked fellow Marines during Marineford just to protect him, smuggled him into Impel Down while risking everything. So if the world government actually tried to execute the man she loves, Hancock wouldn't care if every admiral stood in her way. She'd fight every last one of them without hesitation. But while Hancock is driven by love, the next person's pain runs much deeper. Monkey D. Garp. When the news reaches him, Garp would probably go completely silent because he's lived through this nightmare before. Watching Ace die at Marineford is a wound that never truly healed. As the hero of the Marines, Garp knows exactly what his duty demands. But as Luffy's grandfather, he knows exactly what his heart wants. Just like Marineford, he'd be trapped between justice and family. And if the execution reached its final moments, there's a very real chance Garp would finally choose his grandson, Monkey D. Dragon. Dragon wouldn't allow panic to cloud his judgment. He'd quietly gather the Revolutionary Army and prepare for the biggest operation of his life. Because this isn't just about rescuing his son. This is the perfect opportunity to strike directly at the world government. Dragon could launch the war he's been preparing for all these years. And speaking of Luffy's family, there's one person who already knows what it's like to lose a brother, Sabo. The moment the announcement reaches him, every memory of Ace's death would come flooding back. There's no way Sabo would let history repeat itself. He wouldn't wait for permission. He'd set sail immediately. After finally getting his memories back, Sabo promised himself he'd never lose another brother again. Trafalgar Law. Law would probably stay as calm as ever, but anyone who knows him would realize exactly how much this news affects him. After everything they've survived together, there's no way he'd simply sit back and watch. Instead of rushing into battle, Law would carefully build the perfect rescue plan. Using the Ope Ope no Mi, he'd look for the one opening nobody else could exploit. After all, this is the same man who saved Luffy after Marineford when everyone else thought he was finished. If anyone could pull off an impossible rescue, it's Law. But even Law's strategy might become unnecessary, because the next man could stop the entire war just by showing up. Shanks. There's simply no world where Shanks allows Luffy to be executed. He sacrificed his own arm to protect him as a child because he believed Luffy would inherit Roger's will. That belief hasn't changed. Just like Marineford, Shanks would arrive at the battlefield at the perfect moment. One burst of his Conqueror's Haki would shake the entire battlefield, and if anyone still dared to move, they'd have to fight one of the strongest pirates alive. But while Shanks inspires hope, the next person's reaction would be absolute chaos. Bartolomeo. The poor guy would probably flood his own ship with tears before the battle even starts. Bartolomeo doesn't just admire Luffy, he worships him. We've already seen him attack people over the smallest insult toward his idol, so in execution, he'd throw himself into the war without caring whether he survived or not. But Barto wouldn't be sailing alone. And that's when the Straw Hat Grand Fleet would step in. The second they hear Luffy's been captured, every single captain would set sail without even thinking twice. Back at Dressrosa, they all swore they'd come running whenever Luffy needed them. Thousands of pirates would be sailing straight toward the execution site, ready to fight the entire world government if that's what it takes. Next up, Princess Vivi. The news would completely break her heart. Luffy didn't just save Alabasta, he saved her people and gave her friends she'd never forget. Even if Vivi couldn't join the battle herself, she'd use every connection she has to rally allies against the world government. But the next kingdom wouldn't just send support, they'd prepare for war. The moment the news reaches Wano, at first, Momonosuke would completely break down, but then he'd remember the man who freed Wano. Without hesitation, he'd declare that Wano is marching to save Straw Hat Luffy, and not a single one of them would object, especially Yamato. After losing Ace once, there's no chance she'd lose Luffy too. Next up is Kobe. Out of every Marine alive, Kobe might be the one struggling the most. Luffy isn't just another pirate to him, he's the man who inspired him to chase his dream in the first place. The moment the execution is announced, Kobe would desperately try to convince his superiors that this isn't the right path. He knows Luffy has saved countless innocent lives, and executing someone like him would only push the world into even greater chaos. But if the world government refused to listen, Kobe would face the hardest decision of his life: follow the justice he believes in, or obey the uniform he wears. And while Kobe questions justice, one man wouldn't question it for even a second: Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. To Akainu, this is the perfect ending. He's hated Luffy ever since Marine Marineford, where the pirate escaped right from under his nose after surviving attacks that should have killed him. Now the world government finally has another chance. He'd be the one demanding it happen immediately. And now, if you liked the video, then watch this video next. It'll blow your mind.